One thing about my sketchbooks is that when I was in school, I used to burn through sketchbooks really fast. I almost took pride in the fact that it took me a month or 6 weeks and I had a lot of stuff. And these books have taken longer, like 2 years, sometimes almost 3 years to go through a book. And I use them a little bit differently than the ones that I had before. And so I think this might be a good one to start with.
Okay.
But this is an old one, it's like 2009. And at this point in my career, I had been working for about 10 years as an artist. And I feel like I had a bit of like this artistic crisis. You're trying to fit a look that you believe that people want to see in your portfolio. After doing that for a decade, I felt like, I'm in the industry now, I'm working, but this work doesn't say anything about who I am. So that was the impetus for these pages, and I ended up using it as an opportunity to experiment, to open myself up to approaches in art that I hadn't tried before. And so, for instance, I might mix ink on colored pencil, or then it would be ballpoint pen or acrylic paint or gouache. And it started with me doing almost the same practice that I was doing before, which I was just drawing from life. Living in New York City, I'd go to the laundromat and then I would just draw weird characters that I felt like drawing. So it was kind of this bridge between drawing from life and still studying and doing the academic stuff, like the academic art that I was doing before, but then beginning to merge it with experimenting with shapes, trying things that I wouldn't have done before. They're almost like a bank that you make deposits to. Like I'll grab architectural details from a building in Union Square, New York, and I'll record it in here. And then I can remember it, a specific trip on a train that I took, or going to the laundromat again. I didn't really know what my style looked like. I found that actually when I started doing this stuff, it was kind of scary because I felt like, this is more personal. I'm going to a more personal place. I'm bringing more personal experiences into the work. There's definitely a therapeutic aspect to making art just for yourself, or stuff that speaks to you, that you want to see. I always think like concept artists are in service to a production. This work was about almost being selfish and pleasing me, and also recording things that I just didn't want to forget. I stuck on this page. This is my son when he was 10 days old. And I feel like these books now like keep time for me, because there are later pages you'll see he's a lot older. It's largely chronological, this book, almost an exercise in working from page to page. When I would work on a page, I would look at the next page and I would think, what does this page need? It's kind of like when you're making a movie. If every scene has action, explosions, you don't have any pace to it. And I wanted to try and make a sketchbook that considered other stuff. Like I found like drawing patterns really soothing. And then I would say, okay, well, let's make something that's not soothing. And that's the opposite of that. And it was really about exploration. And I'm sure an art director could look and be like, the colors are really muddy, or but it wasn't about that. 2009 was like a crazy year for me. There was a lot, because there was my son being born, which was really fantastic. But then there was also some really sad stuff that happened in my life. I lost a really good friend, and there had to be something in there, I think, that was kind of driving a lot of this. Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like with these pages, with these books, this one I think I was a little bit more precious with, because it was the first time I had tried working this way. And they're really precious to me now. But at the time that I'm working on them, I'm just like brutal to my sketchbooks.
What about all those characters that you have there?
They come from, I think there's probably an influence in classic cartoons of like strong silhouette, and creating like distinct shapes. But then a lot of these patterns are just coming from shapes that I would see on the street in New York. And that's where the sketchbook is like the bank. I'm banking experiences. I'm banking textures or patterns, stimuli that I find interesting. And in my job, a lot of it was doing color keys where you're telling stories through sequences, through color. And so I always liked the idea of putting images next to each other, that things that didn't necessarily make sense, that sometimes you put them together and they make it really profound, or sometimes it doesn't make any sense or it clashes. And so there's a lot of that in this book. A subway turnstile or a payphone on top of a floor pattern, on top of some dude who was sleeping on the train. When I was in art school and I was thinking about really academic training, that I think I closed myself off to other art that I didn't understand. And so I just was like, I'm not interested in looking at that. By working this way, I feel like it opened me up to at least trying to learn more about other people's art and other types of art. Yeah, this is an image of the New York DMV. I had done drawings in ballpoint pen, and then I realized sometimes I didn't like them, so I painted over them in gesso. But I didn't realize that gesso doesn't cover over certain types of ballpoint pen, but it creates ghosting textures that felt really appropriate for this image. So I think that this was kind of a product of, I'm experimenting with medium and I can see what certain things do, or you can kind of see how long the book took, because that kid that was 10 days old is now like a little bit older here. And yeah, that's
amazing.
That was this book.
So this is 2009.
It was 2009, and now we're probably around 2012, 2013. So again, I was still experimenting with medium. If I'm developing myself as an artist, then that benefits the people that I'm working for. And if I have a richer well to draw inspiration from, then that's always a good thing. Growing up, people in my family were really interested in Mexican and pre-Columbian art. And I visited like Chichen Itza, and I know that it was really like profoundly like inspiring being there. And my mom's from El Salvador. But then there's also weird connections, like when Hurricane Sandy hit New York. And so there would be driftwood or stuff that had washed up along the East River. It all of a sudden ended up finding its way in the sketchbook. I think it's kind of this weird combination of recreate a dream or something. My son drawing in my book. It's like reminding myself not to be too precious with it. And it's a lot easier if I think about my sketchbooks as that I'm playing the long game, and that they're all one sketchbook, and that it's just a continuation of the progress. And if I tear out a page if it's a bad drawing, I would just be lying to myself in a way. It's like, yeah, I know where my flaws are. This is a snapshot of where my development is on this day that I did that. And part of the pleasing thing, I think, for any artist should be seeing that progress, seeing how they grow, how they might see the world differently. It's like, it's okay if things don't work, or if a drawing isn't up to par, or my son draws that. Actually, it's probably me, but I'm just blaming it on him. Yeah, but I love putting images together. I think and maybe that's the film background. I worked as a concept artist at Lucasfilm to start off with, and then I went to I had a brief period at DreamWorks Feature Animation, and then I went to Blue Sky Studios and worked there for 13 years. And now I'm working in games, and I work at King. This is probably the last one that's fully completed. This poor book went through hell. I lost it in Majorca, but then found it, and got caught in a rainstorm in Scotland, and was just completely soaked. I was crushed, and then completely relieved when I found it. This one, I haven't tested out as much with paint, so they're mostly just pen drawings. I found these cool ballpoint pens that have like multiple colors. You can see my son is now like almost a teenager in these drawings. This is almost more of like a travel sketchbook. This is the Pantheon. This is my son's version of me, and there are a couple images here. This is Florence, being from the United States and then now living over here and being able to travel. It's like you just notice things like these rock textures in Croatia, or like different like rock patterns or statues or things that I would see in Rome. I think these were from Salzburg. This is the book that was also largely a lot of lockdown drawings as well.
Did you draw differently during the lockdown?
I think that my drawings have changed, but part of it is due to medium. I think I'm using more ballpoint pen and less paint in these images. But I'm actually painting a lot more just outside of the sketchbook. I think it took a lot of energy to paint in a sketchbook. And now when I am painting, I'm painting on canvases. And I remember being towards the end of this book and feeling really sad that I was finishing this one. So yeah, those are my sketchbooks. This is just sort of a continuation of, I think I just started this in the last couple months, like maybe a month ago.
How many sketchbooks do you have? Like
I don't know. I've never counted them. There are a lot. A lot of them are here in London with me. I think that those there, I feel very precious about my sketchbooks, but then I also have other ones that are still in California with my parents or back in New York in my old apartment. So yeah, they're spread out, but I definitely need at least a couple of shelves.
Okay, so you can put that one aside.
Okay.
And these are two sketchbooks that the guests all sketched here.
I'm almost afraid to look at the pages to see what. Oh, wow. All right. No pressure.
No pressure.
Need glasses.
Do you sketch and talk and draw and talk?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. I think when you work in a studio, you can't help but not do that. It's.
I read that you also did kids' books.
Yeah. I think it was just something that I wanted to try, and it was incredibly fun, and I'm really glad I did it, but it was also really stressful. I think that was one of the points when I decided that I just wanted to try and see where the next step for me to go was. I think with art, it's always hard to do anything if you're not moving forward and doing something different. I sometimes feel like when it comes to art paths that you need to do some sort of work. For me, I almost have to get it out of my system. Once I've done that and I've said what I want to say, then it's like, oh, okay, it frees me up to try other things. And I feel like when I first moved to the UK, there was a period where I didn't paint at all. And I think it was just getting used to living in a new place and getting my bearings. And then it was probably about, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago that I really started feeling like, okay, I miss this. And so yeah, I've been painting more. I think that in the US, you kind of have this sort of bubble that you grow up in, and just being able to see other people's, like seeing the world from a different point of view, I think was really valuable. It's just so like easy to get around and to get to other places. Like, I don't know if I ever would have gotten a chance to visit Malta had I not lived here first and been able to come to the festival a couple of years ago.
How long have you been in London?
Just about 5 years.
And you grew up where?
In San Francisco.
Okay,
I'm almost done. Just gonna make some of the lines a little bit bolder. All right. Thank you very much.
Robert.
It's great to meet you.
Great talking to you. This was pretty great.